All right, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. But it's that time again. It's been a few weeks, and we are back today with another Generations Collide with no other than Robert Jones and Jack Coricelli with Solutions Matters. So we like to deliver a fun report, deliver news, kind of break it up a little bit between the Millennials and Generation X, primarily because it's important to know what everyone is thinking. There's the world right now is just kind of in complete chaos. Gentlemen, welcome. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing?
Doing great, yeah.
Yeah, just trying to make sense of a crazy world that we're living in, and what we're doing, and the administration. It's just kind of odd. It just seems like everything's kind of flipped like the last 2 weeks upside down, right?
Yeah, a bit crazy. I mean, yeah, like you said, the last 2 weeks have been just a crapshoot with news. It's impossible to know what's real, what's accurate, and what's actually
fake.
what's happening. There's misinformation going around. There's people who are just gossiping, which is weird. Now we're in a time where like gossiping about news is like popular. It seems like before it wasn't a big deal, but nowadays everyone wants to talk about it. I don't know.
Well, I think like people have lost their trust in the news and the media because of the mispredictions of the election and just things that they've said and misreported. I kind of think that people are really questioning whether the news are sincere and actually giving people the information that they need.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's weird how quick people are to make judgments. When the Trump bombing of the Syrian air base, how quick I saw a lot of people immediately turn against Trump because of how quick he decided he was going to make that change, and there's a lot of hypocrisy there. Back in the day, Trump tweeted about Obama bombing Syria, and then he without congressional approval, and then he turns around and does it himself. I don't know. It's weird how we're starting to see a lot of mirroring between two vastly different parties and people, and how they're almost sort of coming together.
Right. Yeah, exactly. What kind of vibes are you guys getting there in school? What's the climate regarding the recent actions and the escalation of military events? I mean, I'm interested to hear what teachers are saying, what students are saying, what news stations are they showing in the classroom? And because obviously everyone is under some sort of influence, right? Whether you get it from the media, whether you get it from family, friends. So what's the vibe there at school, guys?
Well, I know for me, most of my teachers don't comment on politics because, well, they make the students mad, and I really don't think teachers should comment on politics. But I know the students in our innovation class, we've been talking about what's been going on and whether the strikes are good and they're bad and everything. For the most part, my conservative friends are like, it's good, but my liberal friends are like, well, he's bombing the same children that he won't allow into the country, which is not true because he's not bombing the kids.
Right. Yeah, he bombed an Air Force base, right?
Yeah, he bombed an Air Force military base that was clear of people. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, I thought that was kind of weird that Hillary. I mean, I think Hillary was one of the people who commented on that. It seems like we're at a time right now where people are scared to talk about it. I actually disagree with Robert. I think teachers should talk about politics. I don't think they should necessarily take a stance, but I think it should be something that's in the classroom all the time because it's such a big, it's such a big deal. It's part of our daily lives now. When you talk about possibly getting into multiple different wars, I mean, we're, fighting a it's almost like we're getting into war in multiple places. Obviously, the North Korea thing, the Syria thing, and then still, elsewhere in the Middle East, and now maybe even Russia, God forbid. It's really worrying, and to see people shy away from it is discouraging, I think.
Well, see, I'm coming from the point where teachers when they do comment on political issues, it's kind of forcing their views on other students. Like, for example, I was in a class, and I'm not going to name the class, but
yeah, please don't. No teachers' names here.
Yeah, the class should be about grammar and writing and all that kind of stuff. And we talk about just stuff like Germany and the Holocaust and that kind of stuff. And it's like, we really don't need to talk about this stuff. We need to be talking about grammar and stuff. But she played a commercial back during the Super Bowl, and it was a commercial of the mom and her daughter migrating from Mexico to the United States.
I remember that.
Yeah. And she played the whole 15-minute video and how they traveled up from Mexico to come and find a big wall and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, they got to the wall and they couldn't get in because there was a wall there and they didn't know that the wall was there. So she was like, yeah, it's so sad that they have that wall there and the people can't come to America. And it's like, well, they should come legally, because if they come legally, then they can get into the country. So, and then we got in this big argument about the situation, and it's like,
it's tough. It's a really fine line to walk across and to be able to, because everyone has their own belief system, right? Everyone has their belief, and I'm a firm believer that if you're an anti-Trumper leading into the election, you're still an anti-Trumper for the most part. I still believe, and we see this a lot in some of the conservatives, that if you're pro-Trump, that you're still pro-Trump, that he can still do no wrong, despite the fact that he has made numerous policy shifts of things that he campaigned on, through the election. And now you take a look at his actions, and it's completely different narrative. You guys are right. It's like even CNN has been applauding him recently. It's like has the world just been turned upside down?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. They had that guy Hassam Aid. I'm sorry. They had him on talking about applauding Trump. That is a great idea. And CNN wanted to sort of play it off like they didn't really want him to say it. You could see, but from her body language. But
she was trying to cut him off.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I personally think they wouldn't have had him on there if they felt like he was going to say something that went against what they were thinking. I think they knew who they were getting on. I think they wanted that. They wanted to be a little contrarian for a second. I don't know why. It seems really weird. Speaking of commercials, let me go back for a second and sort of, I don't know. You mentioned a commercial, and this big commercial that I'm sure everyone's heard about, the Kendall Jenner Pepsi commercial. That
was it. Break that down for me, because I just caught just the headlines, the tweets, and everything. But break that down for us. What happened?
I mean, I haven't looked into it a bunch. I know the commercial was Kendall Jenner at a protest, and she gave a cop or someone or a riot police or somebody a Pepsi, and it was sort of that was their tagline. It was like, "Come together with a Pepsi," blah blah blah. And then as soon as that happened, everyone on Twitter exploded. They were like, "Oh," because I believe it aired on MLK Day. One of the first days or something like that. So everyone was saying, "Oh yeah, if only Martin Luther King Jr. had a Pepsi," or something like that. And the FBI, for some reason, at the same time, recounted remembrance for MLK, and that was the same day that this all happened.
Funny.
So it added up. Yeah, and everyone was saying, "Well, yeah, FBI, you terrorized him more than anybody."
Yeah.
So it
great point.
Really
stalked him and listened to his phone calls.
Yeah, it really raised a lot of racial tension that day. I mean, police versus people was a big deal on that day, because it was like, Pepsi versus, or not Pepsi versus police, but it was people versus police. And then suddenly Pepsi's trying to bring them together. But the subject matter, I think, is what got people, because there has been some mistreatment at protests and things like that from police in the past. And most of the people who added an outcry, I think, were liberal as well. But it was the fact that, they threw in the protest and it aired on MLK Day. I think it was the time it aired is really the issue. The commercial, I think, it shows a good message. I mean, a pointless message. I don't see how a soda is going to bring you guys together, but for better or for worse,
cold beverage.
I think it was okay marketing technique by Pepsi. Bad timing, but okay marketing. I don't know. I just know it blew up and it was really confusing.
I mean, I'm like, it's the same thing with the teachers. I'm not really fond of celebrities commenting and being political. I just don't think that it's right.
Well, see, I disagree with that because I think when you tell them they're not entitled to that, I think then you dehumanize them. And I think that's a really big issue with celebrities is that some people view celebrities as gods um, and view them as not actually human. And I think we need to get away from that. I think, people should be political at events, barring being completely idiotic. But
Well, see, that's my fear. Like when you have Meryl Streep or whatever incidents where people just get on
Madonna.
stage, Madonna, yeah, Madonna's a prime example. When you have celebrities with very strong opinions, whether conservative or liberal, get on stage and make a fool of themselves and make a fool of what they actually believe in or speaking about. So that's my biggest.
well, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big, libertarian. I believe in individual rights, individual, I think what comes with that is the risk, and they put themselves out there of potentially ruining their brand, ruining their label. So I think they're entitled to their political beliefs and their system and what they do, whether they give a stump speech. You see it on both sides, both conservative and liberals.
Mhm.
I think more where I get concerned is where we see corporations and the CEOs of corporations try to change their company cultures, their company's beliefs. And there's been several recently that have almost kind of backfired a little bit. You look at Target with the whole transgender thing, saying anyone can go into any of their restrooms. You take a look at Starbucks and their CEO with this, we're going to hire 10,000, I don't know the exact number, but we're going to hire all these refugees, right? And and then also these political stances that corporations and companies are taking, and then they put it into their advertising, very similar to the migrant thing. I can't remember who put that video together. You guys remember what company?
I think it was. Oh gosh,
I can't.
I think it was a car company or something like that.
Yeah, I think you may be right, but I think when they do that, well, my concern is this: is that I've worked for companies before that has put out, political messaging, and sometimes I have difference in opinions, and it almost kind of makes me feel a little bit disenfranchised as an employee, even from a consumer base. Yeah, consumers can harm you as well, but just from an employee perspective, picture there if you're in school and the principal goes on the intercom and gives a political speech about hate or about against Trump or against any belief. Is that as a student you may be like, wow, that was completely different. So we see these CEOs continue to do this. So, but as far as individual rights, I think it's okay, but they do have a lot of influence and they need to understand that. I would much rather see them get involved for nonprofit organizations, to combat homelessness or combat, famine that's, kind of growing, starting to.
Then to be like pro-choice or pro-life or whatever. Like, I'd rather see you do, if you're a celebrity, I'd rather see you do and work with an issue that everybody can agree with.
Well, and I'd rather see you work with an issue than just tweet about it. Because, I mean, like Kanye West, I'm sure he lost quite a few fans when he said at one of his concerts that he would have voted for Trump, because suddenly then the whole hip hop community said, wait, what?
I remember that.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And he made a good case for it. He was talking about why we need it. And a lot of the Kanye fans and a lot of, people in that community suddenly turned on Kanye. And that's just one of the risks they run. I mean, I wouldn't say Kanye has now stopped voicing his opinion. Really, ever since
it's been quieter lately.
Oh yeah, ever since his mental breakdown, it's been.
Well, yeah, and you see artists do it, and I don't. I guess I'm the kind of consumer that it doesn't keep me from
Buying.
Hating or buying. I mean,
Right.
Recently I can think of some different artists, musicians that have different political stances that I do, but I still love their music. I mean, a couple that come to mind is Pearl Jam that just got inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're very much anti-gun. They openly through concerts have stated that they're one. U2 with Bono, you guys know Bono's very libertarian, everything, but I still love their music. Now I'm not saying that I'm like all consumers. I think some consumers are out there, and I always laugh people put this, we're going to boycott this, we're going to boycott that. I'm like, okay.
I feel the same way. Like Alicia Keys, I hate her political views, but I think she's a good artist. She's a good piano player, a good singer. So I still listen to the music. So
yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, I never really noticed that too much. I assume a lot of the artists I listen to are probably very, very liberal, and I would say generally many artists out there are.
Hollywood is.
Yeah, I mean, just
majority.
because of what it is. I'm sure maybe more country music artists are probably, maybe a little more towards the right, but I don't know. Because I hold a lot of social liberal values, apart from the guns thing. I mean, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think guns are a good thing because, if they're legal, you keep them in the hands of the people that can save us when, the people who are going to have them anyway to do harm have them. I mean, I almost think we should have guns in schools.
Right.
Some sort of representative, not just,
or teachers, maybe teachers.
Right, maybe a teacher representative, not every teacher, because I mean that could go badly, but a select few, then throw in the officers. I do think there should be, at least a minor police presence. I know sometimes we have a couple officers around, and that makes me feel safer instantly, even though just generally because of the media, I feel a little weird around police. It still makes me feel safer when I'm here, just because obviously, I mean, he's armed and everything, and guns. I've always thought guns have been good, even though I don't own one. I mean, I plan on owning one. I don't plan on, carrying it around, but just for home defense, that's something that I've always worried about. I've seen enough, horror movies to know that having no weapon in a situation is really dumb.
Right. Let me ask you guys this. Do you think that at some, as far as society, that we have kind of lost the ability to be able to disagree and to I don't use the word argue, but debate our differences and everything? It just seems like it's either left or right. There's no middle ground. There's no more open discussion regarding these things. What do you guys think about that?
I agree completely. I know me and Jack personally, we disagree on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And we sometimes talk about it on the show, and it makes for good conversation. Like, I have family. I have most of my family. Of course they're black, but they're liberals. So
I thought they were.
Yeah, they were white, but so they disagree with literally everything that I believe in, and I have no problem with it.
Right.
So
you can't. I mean, that's where we're at right now. Where if you disagree with something, then you do the silent treatment, and you don't talk about it because everyone's scared to actually argue. I mean, I'm not a fan of confrontation. But if it's a debate setting and that's okay, and that's it's a safe time to debate, and there's nothing wrong with a healthy debate. And I think America has gotten away from that. The discourse of conversations really injured because of the past two elections, not just the Trump Hillary one, but the Obama Mitt Romney one. I think hurt it a lot too. Because then after the first election, a lot of people were against Obama, and then it started to get into you're only against him because he's black type of deal.
Yeah.
And those people tried to say, no,
I'm
against him.
I want to piggyback off of that last statement you made, because he's black thing. I think it's a big problem that a majority, like most people, when they do argue, they accuse people of being either racist, misogynistic, what's anti-Semitic,
right, xenophobic,
all these different phobias
or
whatever.
Right, any of those.
I think it's crazy that because someone disagrees with you about a certain opinion, that they're a racist, they're a rapist, they're all these different terms when you have no proof to back that up whatsoever.
Right. I mean, just because I believe and don't necessarily want thousands or even more random people from a country that is quickly being radicalized, pouring into the country, that doesn't mean I'm a xenophobe. A xenophobe would be seeing somebody from an outside country and immediately assuming the worst. We're talking about circumstance here. This is a country, Syrian refugees who are being radicalized, every day. Yes, there's the emotional side where you want them to escape the hell they're in, obviously, but it's not xenophobic of me to want, security for the country. That is not xenophobic. And it's also
If
It's
anything, you're caring about all of the people that we currently have in our country right now.
right. And that includes people from foreign countries.
Yeah.
Because, America is the melting pot. People from Mexico and Canada and any place in Europe and any place in Africa. That includes the people who are from foreign nations. I just don't want those extra people in who could cause a threat. And yeah, you could make the argument that there are people here already who could cause a threat. And I made that argument a month ago. But we're at that stalemate where it's like you have to just chill out for a second. But yeah, the debate, we're not able to anymore, because like Robert said, if you have a different opinion than someone else, they assume the worst.
So
Yeah,
I like what you're saying, Jack. So we know that the state of debating is very bad right now. So how do we fix that?
Right. Yeah.
well, I think one thing that has to occur is that, you have to take, I think probably on the front of that, it's kind of like UC Berkeley, right? When you think of how they have been these conservative groups that are, I think it starts on perhaps maybe college campuses. If you look at some of these, conservative groups, some of these, Ann Coulter's, I know Lauren Southern, I guess there's a big freedom of speech, not protest, but freedom of speech event that's going to occur, I think either today or tomorrow at UC Berkeley. I know Laura Southern's going to be there from Rebel Media, and so things could heat up once again. But I just watch these on the news where there's a political commentator that's conservative, or there's someone, and these organizations or they go in and they take over, and even in some situations have completely shut down events. I mean, that to me, I think is where it has to start. I mean, I have no problem with opposing views, but is it your right to go in and openly shut down an event just because you have different beliefs?
Yeah, I don't think that's right. I was watching Ben Shapiro. Do you know who Ben Shapiro is?
Absolutely, yes.
Pretty nice conservative gentleman. But he was at some high school speaking, and the crowd of high schoolers were kind of getting a little riled up. And the principal goes on the stage, takes the mic from him, and he's like, to those students in the audience who want to be dismissed, you guys can go back to homeroom or whatever. Like, he just confiscated the mic, canceled the whole thing right then and there because Ben Shapiro was saying something that some of the students disagreed with. I don't think it's right.
Yeah, that's hurtful to the integrity of the idea of a debate in a speech in general. I haven't heard of that.
And even
happening.
school is supposed to challenge you, your beliefs.
We're in school sometimes, and I don't mean to bash the school we're at. I won't name the name, but I'm sure people know. If you try to talk about some things, the administration will try to shut you down, or the teachers will try to shut you down. And that's, it's not okay to, say that talking about it isn't okay. We're at a point where the only thing that's going to help a lot of these issues is talking through it. And staying silent about it is only making it worse. And I think that applies to racism. I think it applies to homophobia, xenophobia, and I think it applies to everything. Islamophobia. Why are people afraid of Muslims, and why don't Muslims who are peaceful understand why some people are afraid? Because if it's pretty arrogant if you are a Muslim to not even understand why someone would be afraid. As ignorant as that is, and we can agree that's fairly ignorant to just be like, oh, I'm afraid of all Muslims, because that is generalizing. But as a Muslim, very, very ignorant and arrogant of you to not even try to understand why they would be afraid.
Yeah,
that's where you have to have the discussion. So if you're talking about a super conservative white guy and a very liberal Muslim, that's where you have to have that conversation and say, why?
Spend a day with a racist.
Right, yeah, talk about it. Why am I afraid? Why is this guy afraid of Muslims? Or why is this person afraid of that conservative white person?
Yeah. I want to elaborate on
go for it.
Spend a day with a racist. This is the thing that we were talking about. So basically what you do is you get a black guy and you get a white guy that doesn't like black guys. And you have the white guy hang out with the black guy 24 hours a day. One day. You have him hang out with them one day. And then after the 24 hours, you see if the racist guy really, really doesn't like the black guy. And the whole point of this is to sway the white guy into seeing that not all black people are bad.
Right.
I think it works with Muslims, it works with Mexicans, it works with blacks, it works with whites, it works with everybody. Just spend time with the person that you're either afraid of, you disagree, or you hate.
Yeah, hate only
And
comes
you
from
will
ignorance.
exactly. If you're ignorant to that person and those people's beliefs and what they do and actually how they are, then talk to them.
Right. Well, and here's the thing. In terms of like culturally, there's traditions within each culture too that I think, as long as it doesn't harm specifically other people, I think are okay. I mean, for example, there's certain cultures that the tradition is arranged marriages. There are certain cultures that the family teaches to marry only within the same race. I mean, some of these things that are traditions years upon years. Does that necessarily make them a racist? Probably not. But I could also tell you this is that I think sometimes people get in their own comfort zones, and it's not that they don't want to understand other cultures. It's just that they're not exactly what you stated. They're not ever given that opportunity to do that. You know, for example, I grew up in predominantly white America, very small community, everything else. I may not necessarily know how to act, or not necessarily act, but to understand some of the black culture. It doesn't make me necessarily a racist, but to understand it, some of the cultures that are there between, Hispanics, I wouldn't expect a white person to necessarily go to, a Hispanic, get together or a mariachi and completely understand the concepts of it.
Right.
But again, and then I guess the ending conversation, or what I'd like to say about it in terms of my perspective, is that sometimes I think that whole, I think the Obama years kind of electrified that whole racist and racism, and it would just eventually became that if you disagree with Obama, then unfortunately more than likely you're a racist, because it was the easy card to play.
And I have a prime example. Me and my grandfather, over the past week when we had spring break, I was over at their house, and he told me that the reason Obama couldn't get anything done was because white people didn't like him because he was black. He said that was the only reason. And I'm like, do you really think that was the only reason why? Like, you're really doing a disservice to not only me, but the entire society by placing that label on people when you have no proof of that at all. It's really stupid.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I think the more realistic, reason, and I'm sure there was one congressman who didn't like him because he was black. I'm sure there's congressmen
probably more.
Yeah, but the more realistic reason, and this is the sad part about politics, is that we still had, I believe, at that time, a Republican majority House, and we had a Democrat president. So, they're trying to stay elected. That's the problem with no term limits in Congress, is that when you have a Democrat in office who's trying to push things good or bad, and you're a Republican trying to stay reelected, just trying to, represent for the people who elected you, and, you're going to turn everything down.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for such a long time. And that's why I really hope Trump pushes for the term limits for Congress.
But how's he going to get that through Congress?
Right. Yeah, that's an issue.
It's not going to happen. Could
I'm
he use an
worried.
executive order to do that?
Yeah, I wonder.
Well, I would think that he could. I mean, if you look at some of the executive orders that get passed, and I think you guys are leading the conversation in the right way, in particular with the federal government, taking a look at this massive entity of an elite class, to me, that pretty much embodies a lot of what's wrong in America today. That you have these two elite classes, Democrats and Republicans, that come together, and they eventually form this protective class that's there to protect itself.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people think that the debates are between these two, and I think it's almost that these two are playing their own little game just to stay in power. I don't know. Marco Rubio had a really good point. He was in a hearing, I think. It was like a month or two back, and he was talking about the fact that he is disgusted and disappointed with the way these debates go and how bloody they get, and the point that no one's discussing the issue anymore. So when you talk about, people only didn't pass Obama's laws because he was black, That's no longer the issue. Obviously, that isn't what it is. The issue is that there are people in government who will pass no laws that aren't what they are, despite if they know, it will better the country,
The people, yeah.
Yeah, if it's a Democratic, a Democrat made law and they're a Republican, they're not going to pass it. It doesn't matter, and that's really sad. That's why we have to do that. And I think he was also talking about the fact that the debates just they are drivel now. It's there
are no real solutions being brought up. And by the way, speaking of solutions,
yes, that's important. Solutions matter, right?
Solutions matter. Check us out. We are on everything.
Yeah,
we are on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, you name it.
Awesome. And I think that's important as well, much like the classroom and what Don Wettrick has brought to the classroom in terms of really trying to change things up a little bit. I would really like to think that the millennials, along with Generation Xers, come together to really innovate and reform the federal government. I mean, it's really never been talked about.
Yeah,
it's time to innovate the federal government. Think about it. We did a great interview last night, and this interview is going to be a roguemoney.net exclusive. So if you haven't done so yet, go to roguemoney.net and put your email in there and subscribe. And you think of how technology has changed things, and we are just at the cusp of how much technology is going to change things. Do you remember a few years ago that there used to be a nurses line that companies would give their employees to take home to their families, that you could call this nurses line and call in and talk with a doctor? Well, now it's going completely all web-based, where you can actually sit in front of your computer, have your webcam, have your mic, whatever, and that you can actually virtually connect with a nurse practitioner, with someone. What if we applied that same thing to Washington, D.C.? Because it seems like to me there's a lot of good people that go to Washington, D.C. with great intentions, right? They talk in their local areas about what they're going to do, how they're going to change things, and then they go to Washington, D.C. and something happens. Something happens.
No.
So do they really need? Why can't they be virtual representatives? Why can't they still live primarily in their own communities? What if these people that are in Congress and Senate, what if, and again, the gentleman that we interviewed last night specifically said, what if these people still went to the grocery store every day with their constituents?
Well, they definitely be more held accountable by the people if they saw the people every day. Like if they wrote a bill and Dick, Tom, and Harry didn't like the bill and they saw him at the store, they'd confront him and tell him, hey, we don't like the bill, change it. And then he'd have to do something because he's their representative. So I think it would be a great thing to do because it would hold these politicians accountable.
Yeah. I mean, I've never actually thought of that, and that's a really good idea, because when you think about where, every sector that's being innovated, and we're starting to get to the point where education's being innovated. But you think about before that, I mean, 10 years ago, education has looked the exact same since the beginning of time, since the beginning education.
Right.
One person at front, rows of chairs, everyone's sitting there, do this, do that, go home and do this.
Yeah.
That's been the same thing for so long. Wettrick, Don Wettrick's, innovating, education. I hope it spreads. That's his goal. But yeah, there hasn't been, government has looked the same. That's so weird that you say that and no one thinks about that. Government has been, the United States government has operated the exact same way since
the 1700s.
Since 1776. It's
right.
It's weird that back in 1776 we had a couple million people in the country. So it's a lot easier to say you have someone representing, a few 100,000 or, 100,000. But now we have, 700? Is that how many people are in Congress? I don't know the exact number.
A lot of people.
A lot of people. Yeah, exactly.
You have those amount of people who are trying to somehow accurately represent, because that's what government is. 300
million people.
350, almost 400 million people. That's impossible to try to accurately represent. And I think we need to actually, if you want my opinion, get rid of the idea of Congress. I think, your idea of the virtual thing, having people who live there, and maybe more of a committee type thing where you have certain people who live in certain towns debate. And I don't think the idea of a big chamber with a bunch of people who have been there for 40 years, these baby boomers who obviously are disconnected from, the places that they are. I'm sure there's people who are still connected with their community,
Yeah.
but the idea that um, those people that are accurately representing the huge mass of diverse people too. When you think about government, a lot of the people look exactly the same. They act exactly the same. There's a little bit of diversity. There's some black people and a little bit, but
it's not enough.
Yeah, there's every conservative looks and talks the same way.
Yeah, I honestly think that when the baby boomers start to get out of office, and they are still in, I was about to say they're starting to get out, but they're still in there because
they need to.
They've been in there for 40 years. I mean, I think when younger people get in charge, I think things will really start to change.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too, and I've said this numerous times, is that as much as companies, schools, society, as much as we talk about diversity, okay, and not just diversity of the color of your skin, diversity in backgrounds, diversity in education, okay, we think of how diverse, how much we talk about, and we almost to the point where we preach it, right? I remember going through corporate America, and they have these diversity classes and why it's important. So I totally get it. I get it. But at the end of the day, in our political system, we're asked to take the amount of diversity that we have and pretty much draw it into either one of two political party affiliations.
Right.
Okay, so what if we got rid of the labels? What if we got rid of the political labels? Because to me, the Democratic, it's hard unless you have, that's what's corrupted the system is the amount of money and greed, and unless you're self-funded like a Donald Trump that's a millionaire, or you identify yourself as a Republican or Democrat to have the amount of funds that those parties raise, it's very difficult to change the system. So I think that would be a good foundation to think about in terms of, what the Democratic and Republican parties represent, and asking everyone to funnel themselves into one of two party affiliations. But anyway, that's just my thoughts on that whole left-right paradigm.
Yeah, George Washington said at the very beginning, political parties will destroy this country. And that was back when there was just one. It was the Whigs, and that was the little thing back then. Don't know what they stood for, but at this point, I know the stereotypes of the two parties, and then there's the actual views of the two parties. Neither of them are good to me because I like parts of both of them, and I don't like parts of both of them, and that's why I just go right down the middle, libertarian or independent. To me, there's no question. Like I'm confident in what I believe in. But there are people who aren't, and they who haven't done enough research to know, what do I think about abortion? What do I think about immigration? So they just say, oh, well, I think that, gay people are okay, so I'm a Democrat then. That's what it is. So that's and that again, let me also say that's just the stereotypical. Stereotypically, conservatives are against gays. That's the idea. But I know plenty of conservatives who are fine with it.
I mean, I don't. Like for me personally, I really don't care what gays do in their privacy. That's them. Like they can do whatever they want.
Right. No, I completely agree. I have gay friends, everything else. Yeah, that's their.
Just let them do whatever they want.
Right.
But on the other side, I support abortion. I think I really don't have a problem with it. It's their decision.
Right.
And I know that'll probably get me in trouble, but.
Oh, well, no, I mean.
And then,
it's not like you're saying you're pro-abortion, right? I mean, you're saying that a woman should have a right to choose.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my decision.
Right, yeah.
That has nothing to do with me.
Another example of where the debates are at in this country. If you say you're pro-choice, people automatically assume you're pro-murder baby. That's what they think it is. And I'm just, I've always been pro-choice. And Louis C.K. Did a bit on this in his new, special. He was talking about it's either, pooping, to put it lightly. He said it in a different way, obviously, but or murdering a baby. And it's one of the two things. It's either not a big deal at all or murdering a baby.
Yeah.
And he's also pro-choice, and he said a very weird way that is very, different than how we look at it. He's saying that women, it's their job, to pick out, to decide who gets to live. It's a weird way, but in the wild, that's how it works. You know, the mother might just eat their baby because it's cold outside. The leopard, they might just eat their kid. That could be how it works. So he believes that it's the women's, you know, right and job to make that decision.
It's all personal freedom.
Right.
Choice.
If the woman knows that, you know, the dad's worthless, you know, maybe the genes aren't really there. And that might be super, super morbid to some of you, but you know, it's realistic.
It is.
Right. And a couple of things in terms of, like, you know, the federal government reforming. There's a couple of things specifically that I think all Americans, I think that we could all be upset about and ask for reasons why. And you guys may know this, but most companies, and it's a federal law, it's called the insider trading. You remember when Martha Stewart had to go to jail for her, you know, getting some information from someone, and well, okay, so as an employee, like if you find out, hey, this product line is coming out and it's going to boost sales by 30%, it's whatever, you're not allowed to go, you know, and share that information and buy stock, you know, or share it, knowing that it's going to make an impact. It's called insider trading. Well, did you guys know that the House and Senate, unless something's changed, that they're shielded from that? That they can go out and they can buy stocks, they can openly trade. That's why so many of them, like there was a tweet that went out that Susan Rice's income was like $164,000, but yet her net worth is like $9.9 million. And she went to DC like just 8 years ago. So how did she, you know, escalate her wealth? And there's example after example that can be shown where these politicians, they go to DC, you know, making a decent salary, which I have no problem people making a decent salary, but they walk out millionaires. They walk out millionaires. So that's one example that's something that needs to change. Another example is they pass laws that they're exempt from. So, you know, you guys remember Obamacare, right? That was a huge one that okay, well, we're going to pass, you know, Obamacare for, you know, you peons. However, we want to keep our Cadillac insurance in the House and Senate. We don't want that. So any laws that they pass, that they're not immune from it, that they have to sign on to that. But anyway, I just think it's kind of funny that they pass those laws and then they're like, well, we don't want it.
It really shows the corruption in our system.
Yeah. I mean, they'll do anything to get reelected. Pass the law, but I get to keep my health care that I just, you know, that's pretty shady.
And by the way, you mentioned Obamacare. I am an insurance agent, and I'm not going to say where, but if you guys do need some insurance, you listeners, let me know.
Yeah, go for it.
Medicare supplement policies, I got you.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I know that both of you, I mean, and again, regarding Solutions Matter and Generations Collide, you know, we do want to, you know, come up, and I think that'd be a good goal of this show, perhaps, is maybe think about innovative ways to policy, innovative ways to government. Because I tell you why, because I regard myself as an anarcho-capitalist, that, you know, that I believe that participation in government should be voluntary. It's just a little bit different political affiliation than most people follow. But the anarchists, they totally believe in self-rule, no government at all. I think that would be a goal eventually to get to in a perfect world. I think that it scares people to think of that, because the label there regarding anarchists it's a bad thing, right? They're like, oh my God, they don't want any government. They're gonna, you know, it just means self-rule is basically what it means. So, but in the interim, I don't think that we can get to that point without some significant changes made to the system. I think there's so many people that are dependent on the system. The system's there, that it would be very difficult. So why not find solutions matter, there you guys go, solutions to our current political system, and come up with some substantive change that we can make as a society to make things better. But anyway, I want you guys to be able to, on today's show, you guys are doing some awesome things, not only with Solutions Matter, but also individually. So Robert, why don't you go ahead and plug, you don't have to plug your agency or anything you work for, but go ahead. What are you working on, bro?
Well, I got my insurance license when I turned 18 a couple months ago, back in February, and getting new to the business, you know, acclimating and all that kind of stuff. If anyone wants any insurance, I can sell life, health, and accident. So like if you need life insurance, you can let me know. Just send me a message on Twitter at @RealRobertJones. If you're turning 65 and you need a Medicare supplement policy, or you think you're paying too much for your Medicare supplement policy, I'll get you a quote and we can see how much money we can save you.
Man, this guy's killing it over here.
Well, I do this for a living. I do this
damn.
for a living. You got to have a pitch, and it's got to be.
He's got it down. That's right. You got to be confident in what you're saying, right?
That is good stuff.
Yeah, if you're like, well, I can help you with your Medicare supplement, then people are going to be like, well, you don't sound too sure in your ability. You got to speak with conviction, like you know what you're talking about.
Let me break out my manual and let me read verbatim what it says.
It says if you're 65 and over.
Yeah.
Jack, I know you got some amazing things going on as well that you're working on with your.
Been really exciting. Yeah. I on April 7th I released my first actual album that went to stores. It's titled The Phone Vibes. The concept of it was I have been making music on my phone since January 1st, 2015. And now I actually just purchased a home studio. I have everything set up. I'm just waiting on my desk. That's all I'm waiting on. So, I put a compilation together. It's 13 songs. It's on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, Tidal, Shazam, every major music store you could think of. It is there. Definitely check it out. And if you really want to support it, buy it on iTunes. That is fine with me. But yeah, and I just want to publicly thank everyone who has purchased it, who has supported it, who has sent me messages of support, listened to it, anything like that. That really means a lot. That's the reason I make it. So yeah, I'm making the music. I'm working on another album already.
Awesome.
Hopefully to come out mid-July.
I'd like to be a feature on this album.
If I really definitely, yeah. It's going to be 20 songs, and I have 3 months to do that. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to try. It'll be a test of my abilities, but it's worth it. It's really fun. I like it a lot. So
absolutely. Well, you both inspire me because that's what it's all about. It's about finding things that you do well, that you're passionate about. And one of the goals, we want to share that message because, let's face it, the jobs of our tomorrow are changing quickly, with all the technology, with the robots, some of the things that we're seeing they're doing in China, some of the things that Jeff Bezos from Amazon's talking about, that he wants to have an entire retail store with just one employee and the rest of it's robot, lots of things. So what I'm getting at is find something that you're good at, find something that you're passionate about, and make money doing it, be good. So, but I appreciate it. And again, any closing thoughts, gentlemen?
Everybody have a good day.
Yeah. It just, be vigilant, stay sharp,
keep learning.
There's a lot of things that could get you fuzzy in the media. If you stay sharp, you'll be fine. Do your own research. Everything's not as scary as it sounds. I trust that.
Roger that. And this is CJ from Rogue Money Media. Check us out, roguemoney.net, at the Rogue Money on Twitter, our Facebook page, our Steam It page, Apple. We are Apple News, Google News. We are about everywhere nowadays. So check us out. V could not be here today. He has an important meeting that he's taking care of business. So we are here to deliver another outstanding Solutions Matter with Generations Collide with Solutions Matter. Great fun show. So show some love, like us, and make sure you share it. So that is it. And we are over and we're out. Take care, everyone.